Okay. And Sean, same thing to you. If you can still hear us in the Puck Podcast jersey, please give me a thumbs up. All right. So we are still heard, Ed. Uh, it seems like all is well.
Again, apologies, but we knew we had a good idea that we were going to have to do a little trial and error. So
Yes.
there we go.
And so it is. So, Ed, why don't you start us off?
Well, welcome to the first ever Puck Podcast Google Plus broadcast. Thanks for joining us. Obviously, I am not at Staples Center. We had talked about it on the show this week that I was going to try and get out there. But life has interrupted my plans, as sometimes happens. But I was told by Doug that that's probably actually a good thing because you need to do this in kind of a quiet place. So anyway, we are basically at the halfway point of the season. As I check the standings here, see if how many everybody's played.
Everybody but two teams, the Flames and the Bruins, have not played, and the Bruins would have, except for the game that got snowed out.
Yeah, so we do have. It's kind of a little bit everywhere. I see the Flyers have played 27 games, but pretty much everyone's played 24, 25 games. So we're about as close to the midway point of the season as we're going to get, I guess. So we wanted to go through our midseason awards, and if the season ended today, this is who we would give our awards to. And not surprisingly, there are some surprises and some non-surprises, I guess. But Doug, which award would you like to begin with?
I say we start with the Rookie of the Year.
All right.
The
Well,
Calder Trophy.
the Rookie of the Year, the Calder Trophy. In the NHL over the past few years, I think one of the things, since I became a fan in the mid-'90s, one of the things I think that's really helped the game out is the influx of young talent that's able to make an impact almost immediately. It seems, anyway, that the developmental leagues are doing a better job, or players are just being trained at an earlier age or whatever. But it seems like we're seeing more of this where, one of the things that was tough about the NHL draft, and if you look at the baseball draft, a lot of times these guys get drafted and then they disappear for a few years. But in the NFL, for example, in basketball, a lot of times they show up and not only do they contribute or they play a lot, but they may even be impact players, as we saw in the NFL this year with some of the rookie quarterbacks. But, we've seen some talented rookies, obviously, so far this year. Doug, I don't know who your selection is, obviously, but I think it's a pretty good likelihood to say that the Rookie of the Year will come from the state of Florida. But will it be Corey Conacher of the Lightning or Jonathan Huberdeau of the Florida Panthers? Agree or disagree?
Agree. And without knowing your pick, I think I now know I got a 50-50 chance of guessing it.
You want my pick first?
We can. 1 second, please. Let me just send that out. All right. Just wanted to invite people via Twitter. So anybody watching via Twitter, thank you for joining us. I will go ahead and give your pick, Ed. Your pick for the Calder Trophy Rookie of the Year. And these are just the first half. We're not predicting who will win the award at the end of the season. We're saying who's the Calder Trophy winner for the first half of the season.
It's very close between the two of them. I'm a big Corey Conacher fan for a lot of reasons. It's an underdog story in a lot of ways. He's a little tiny guy. He didn't get drafted. He was told throughout his career that he wasn't going to make it, and yet, he's persevered and he's doing great. So far on the season, he got 7 goals, 13 assists for 20 points. I'm rooting for him, but I'm not giving him my vote. I'm going with Jonathan Huberdeau simply because, in his stats on the season, 12 goals, 5 assists for 17 points. I think he's on a worse team. I think it's harder for him to put up numbers on that Florida Panthers team than it is for Corey Conacher playing with Vinny Lecavalier and playing with Martin St. Louis, etc. He's got some really, really elite talented guys to be able to play with, and he has been playing with those guys. He's not on their top line, but he is seeing time with them. He's seeing power play time as well. So it's too bad I'm knocking a guy for the guys he's playing around. But I just think, again, I think Huberdeau is in a more difficult situation to put up the numbers. He may get more ice time because the talent there in Florida maybe not as great as Tampa Bay. But that's my reasoning for giving it to Jonathan Huberdeau.
All right, fair enough. I can't argue with any of that. It's your opinion. I will say that I'd rather get 5 to 10 minutes of ice time on the Lightning than 10 to 15 minutes on the Panthers. as you for the reasons you suggested, and Huberdeau is having himself one hell of a season. That being said, my pick for the Calder Trophy winner for the first half of the season is, drum roll.
We are in agreement.
Indeed, Jonathan Huberdeau, and I even came with props. So Jonathan Huberdeau, I mean, for everything you said, Ed, the guy's been, I watched a couple of Panthers games recently, and he actually looked to be one of their better forwards, which is unfortunate for Florida, but great for Jonathan Huberdeau, that a rookie and is one of their better players. And Dale Talon, last night I was watching their game against Montreal when they got beaten pretty badly. They came back and made a game of it late, but it was clear that if he is to have a fire sale or make some trades here in the second half of the season, the 4 players that he's not getting rid of are Drew Shore, Jacob Markstrom, Jonathan Huberdeau, and I think he's leery to get rid of Stephen Weiss, but especially now that he's injured. But that's one of the 4 that he'd like to keep. So it says a lot that he's one of the guys they want to keep in town long term and build around. So he is certainly my pick for Calder Trophy. I will go next.
Well, before we move on,
okay.
Looking ahead, are there any other rookies who you feel maybe could kind of jump into the race, or is this just a 2-man race the rest of the way? Because early on in the season, I was very much enamored with Vladimir Tarasenko in St. Louis. He got the concussion. I don't believe he's returned yet to the ice. Our friend Jeff Ponder could fill us in on that. But, maybe if he gets healthy and he comes back and is the dynamic player we saw before, I mean, obviously he's dug himself a little bit of a hole. But is there any rookies you wanted to throw out there as far as maybe a guy that could, emerge more in the second half of the season?
Well, and I should clarify that Damian Brunner is too old to be a rookie, and as is Victor Fost. So
Correct.
Those guys, both first-year players that would be in this conversation if they were eligible, they are not. They are too old.
Do you know what
to
the
be
exact
considered.
age limit is, or do you know what
27,
okay.
I believe, is you got to be 27 or younger to be the rookie of the year. I know Victor Fost is 30, and I believe Brunner is maybe 28. But yeah, they're both older players. They're too old to be in consideration. So really, Tarasenko's the only one if he came back. And I mean, there's still time. There's only 24 games. If somebody has an amazing second half, Kyle Palmieri for the Ducks was having a very good first half until he got injured. He's been moved all over the lineup. I'm not too sold on any one other player as a candidate, but Tarasenko, if he is healthy and comes back, certainly, and there's time for Corey Conacher to put together a strong second half and steal this award. And Justin Schultz in Edmonton is another guy that, if he has a good second half, he can certainly be in contention for this award.
You got a couple of good goalies and good rookies in Montreal, in Brandon Gallagher and Alex Galchenyuk, but I think maybe because they play on the same team, they're kind of in a way not splitting votes, but maybe if there was just one or the other, they get a little bit more attention. I think because they're both on the same team, maybe somehow that kind of takes a little bit away from them a little bit. But if they put up the numbers, who knows?
It could. Brendan Gallagher is much more impressive than I thought he would be, and everybody had the talk about Alex Galchenyuk coming into the season with good reason. Brendan Gallagher is the better of the two for my money right now. He really jumps off the ice as a guy that's a legitimate forward, not just a rookie, but a legitimate forward in the NHL, and looks really good in all 3 places on the ice: neutral zone, defense, and offense. So he's certainly a strong candidate, but he'd have to have Huberdeau with 12 goals on a team that struggles to score goals is just it's a really good stat. He's 13th in the league in goals scored. For a rookie, it's going to be very hard for anybody to pass him up, I think, at this point. Let's go to the next award. You all right with that?
I am.
All right, and let's go with, for no other reason than it's next on my list, the Norris Trophy, the Defenseman of the Year. Typically an award that you give to I like to give it to somebody that is all around instead of just the best offensive player, the best defensive player. I'd like to give it to somebody that is all around having a very good season on defense. To me, the defenseman's number one job, though, is to play defense, and offense is gravy after that. So I tend not to give it to too many players that are just purely offensive guys. Mike Green in the past, you've seen, get this, Lubomir Visnovsky has been in contention in the past, never got voted because he wasn't that great in his own end. But a guy that I think has been excellent defensively and is having the offensive season of his life with 16 points in 24 games and is a plus 17. And he's also happens to be on a team that is having one hell of a good season. And so my pick for the Norris Trophy as the best defenseman through the first 24 games of the season is Francois Beauchemin of the Ducks. That team right there. There you go. He's been amazing this year. He's been on the top line, or top pairing, so he's been going up against the team's best lines all season long and has done just a fantastic job playing defense on the power play, on the penalty kill. He's been outstanding. And I know a lot of fans won't be too familiar with him because the Ducks are never on national TV, but he's really, really done well this season, and you got to give him I think you got to give him serious consideration this season for the job he's done on defense. So that's my pick. And Ed, who do you got?
Well, this trophy for me is always the hardest trophy to pick because I agree with you. I would prefer to give this award to, primarily the most impactful defenseman, so to speak, who also contributes in other ways. And, without seeing everybody, on a nightly basis, for example, you see Francois Beauchemin all the time. You can judge much more easily than I can the type of impact he's having on your team. But when I look at it, my preseason pick was Shea Weber. I know that he's not getting any love at all, but yet he did lose obviously a big teammate in Ryan Suter who left. The Predators are still a very good defensive team. So I still think he's done a pretty good job considering what's been taken away from him and what he's had to shoulder. Chris Letang is obviously putting up the numbers. He gets it done on the power play for Pittsburgh. He sets players up. He's not only can he score, but he's a great setup guy as well. It's hard to ignore his numbers. But I hope this isn't a cop-out, but I can pick what I want, I guess. I think much like you'll see sometimes in the NFL where the best defensive player on the best defensive team will get picked for the Defensive Player of the Year, I think the Chicago Blackhawks have the best defensive core from top to bottom. Hjalmarsson, Leddy, Oduya, Roosevelt, Seabrook have all been tremendous for them. And obviously the leader of that group is Duncan Keith. So based on that criteria, you're kind of rewarding the best defensive team with the best defensive player on that team. So because it's difficult for me to pick somebody, I'm going to kind of go with Duncan Keith from the Blackhawks.
Well, I think that's a cop-out, personally. But, hey, it's your pick. You do what you want. I kid. There's nothing wrong with Duncan Keith whatsoever. And, it's nothing wrong with picking the best defenseman on one of the best teams in the NHL, and certainly the second best team as far as goals against in the entire NHL. So nothing wrong with that. And speaking of goals against, let's move on to the Vezina Trophy, the best goalie. You get to start it off this time, and if you would please just give me a moment to get the drum roll going before your big pick.
Oh, well, very good. My pick for the Vezina Trophy is.
Oh, you're going right now. Oh, hold on. All right.
I'm going Craig Anderson of the Ottawa Senators. I mean, obviously, you look at the stats. He leads the league in goals against average, and he leads the league in save percentage. That speaks for itself. Obviously, he's out right now, and based on how long he's going to be out of action will determine his prospects for actually winning this award at the end of the season. But we're talking about it right now. And he's played in 15 games. People are talking about Corey Crawford for the Vezina Trophy. He's only played in 16 games because he's sharing time with Ray Emery. So I don't look at it as this recent injury for Craig Anderson to be that much of a detriment in taking the award away from him. I just think flat out he's been the best goalie so far this year, and the injuries and the missed time so far not enough for me to take the award away from him because he hasn't been there virtually every game.
All right, fair enough. I'm going to go a little bit off the reservation here with this pick. Nothing wrong with Craig Anderson. He's had an amazing first half of the season, and the stats are very hard to beat. 1.49 goals against average, 9.52 save percentage, but a guy that has played, I think, more minutes, more games. He's got 20 starts under his belt and is having just, to me, a fantastic season, considering the team in front of him is not doing so great. Maybe a little bit of a surprise, but I'm staying here in California with the pick for the Vezina Trophy, and that is Antti Niemi of the San Jose Sharks. A guy that, again, he's 10-4-5 on the season. He's got a 1.96 goals against average and a 9.32 save percentage. Those are great numbers from a guy that you don't expect them from. And the Sharks, I've watched enough of them this year to know that they're not playing great defensive hockey. Brent Burns has played in just a handful of games, and he is needed to be that good for them to even compete. And the fact that he's only lost 4 of his 20 starts in regulation is a great number for me, for Antti Niemi. He's keeping that team in the playoff race, and without him, they're clearly not a playoff contender, which they still are, at least as of this recording. So for the first half, at least, Antti Niemi gets my pick as the Vezina Trophy winner, which leads us now to the let's go with the Jack Adams, the Coach of the Year, before we get to the big one, the Hart Trophy. And this is always a tricky one because you can go so many different ways. I know that people say it's just as hard to coach a team that is expected to win as it is to coach a team that isn't expected to win, but ultimately I look at it overall and think the way I look at it is who's doing the most with what he was given. Joel Quenneville was given a team that we all considered to be a Stanley Cup contender before the season. They are a Stanley Cup contender. There's no doubt about it.
Agreed.
Most teams have been given, they pretty much are where they are. The teams that are exceeding expectations we'll get to in a bit with these surprises. But there's one team that is, to me, head and shoulders above every other team as far as overachieving, and I have to think that comes from the coach. There was one coach that's had the Midas touch this season, the Goldfinger Award, and every move he makes seems to work out, and that means that the Jack Adams Trophy goes to, for the first half of the season, your friend and mine, Bruce Boudreau of the Ducks. I can't, for the life of me, figure out how this team went 18-3-3 in the first 24 games. I'm thrilled that they did, but it's one of those things that I don't believe what I'm seeing every time I watch him play a game. And he's juggled the lines. He's got the contract problems with Getzlaf up until this past week, and Corey Perry to keep that distraction out of the locker room. This team was 13th in the Western Conference last year. They added Brian Allen, Sheldon Surrey, Daniel Winnick, and a guy from Sweden nobody had heard of, and he's turned them into the best team in the Pacific Division, the second best team in the entire NHL through the first 24 games. So Bruce Boudreau gets my pick for the Jack Adams Award through the first 24 games.
Well, you could pretty much take everything you said and just substitute this name, but pretty much it's the exact same story, but in the other conference. And that person would be Michel Therrien of the Montreal Canadiens. Again, expectations are always going to be high in Montreal. Pressures are always going to be high in Montreal regardless. But, this team was not good last year, just like Anaheim. Got a new head coach coming in there. At least Bruce Boudreau did have a little bit of time to kind of see what he had to get ready for this season. Michel Therrien, I guess he could watch tape to see what he had. But this was brand new right from the get-go, just that week of training camp to get things going. I've said before, they have a great group of players, but they don't have any elite players, in my opinion. And we've talked about Carey Price being good, but I went and looked at the stats, and I was actually surprised that he's 14th in the league in goals against average and 22nd in save percentage. Now, stats don't always tell the story. He's still a very, very good goalie. But I still, as you said with the Ducks, I absolutely have no idea how Michel Therrien is doing this with the Montreal Canadiens. The Ducks are a huge surprise. There's no doubt about that. But the Canadiens are just that much more of a surprise for me. And so I'm going with Michelle Therrien for my Jack Adams Award winner.
Let's just be honest. You couldn't give an award to a duck. Isn't that right?
If
I'm kidding.
I know you are. But if I was ranking them 1, 2, 3, it would be Therrien, Bruce Boudreau would be second, and trying to think, Paul McLean in Ottawa would probably be number 3 right now because of what dealt with.
If I was giving a top 3, you're absolutely right in Therrien and Boudreau. Third to me, though, has got to be Randy Carlyle in Toronto. We talked about they had some of the worst goaltending tandems in the league that we, in our opinions, going into the season. A new GM, not a lot of talent as far as an influx of talent from what they had last year. He's turned Nazem Kadri from a guy that Toronto couldn't wait to get rid of and considered a bust into a very solid player. He's one of their best players, and he's got AHL-type talent playing extremely well. Mike Koska on the blue line, so he's done a fantastic job. There's a lot of candidates this year, to be honest. A lot of candidates, and it'll be a very tough fight in the second half of the season. There's going to be 3 very deserving guys going to Vegas and a lot of deserving guys that don't get the trip. But, yeah, you can make an argument for any of those guys that we've mentioned so far, plus a few others. Everybody but Lindy Ruff pretty much has an argument. That leaves us to the Hart Trophy, Ed, the MVP in the NHL for the first half of the season. Again, like many awards, there's a lot of different ways you can go with this. Why don't you tell us how you determined who the Hart Trophy was, and then who your pick is, and give me a cue on the old drum roll.
Well, it's one of those things where is it just who's the best player in the game, or is it who do you feel has had not only the production but the impact, who's kind of taken their game to another level and been a kind of a key component to the success of a team. Sidney Crosby, you can never go wrong with. He's incredible. And I think he's actually, I know people will probably put their fingers in their ears and not want to hear this, but I think he's actually not getting as much attention as he might deserve, considering it wasn't all that long ago that he was not on the ice and people were wondering if his career might be in doubt and would he ever be the same again. I think he was helped by the lockout and got a little extra rest, but he's back to the exact same old Sidney Crosby we've seen, whatever, in his prime, and is just – he had 5 assists the other day. I mean, he's goal scoring and setting up other players. I don't know that there's a better 1-2 in those statistics in the NHL. Steven Stamkos may be the best pure goal scorer, but he's – I don't think anyone would say that he's a great setup man, and I'm not knocking him for that. You have your strengths and your weaknesses, but I think Sidney Crosby is a guy on any given night. He's either going to set up the game-winning goal or score the game-winning goal. And I also wanted to point out another Penguin, and he's a former Duck, Doug, and no one's talking about him, but Chris Kunitz is a legitimate, stats-wise, is a legitimate MVP contender. He's right now 3rd in the league in points.
Because of Sidney Crosby.
Well, yeah, but he is 2nd in the league in goal scoring as well.
But
if you're, I'm just saying, look, Chris Kunitz, no one's going to vote for him.
No.
Okay? But if you're going to go by stats, and some people go by stats and production, pure production, he's up there, and he's been in the top 5 pretty much all year. And I just wanted to point him out as a name that he's having a hell of a year.
Right.
That said, get the drum roll ready. My MVP, my Hart Trophy winner of the NHL is Patrick Kane of the Chicago Blackhawks. Now, he has good stats. I believe he's 6th in the league in goal scoring. He's got 14, 6th in the league in scoring overall with 30 points. So he's just outside the top 5, but we've talked about it all year. And I don't know who brought it up first, me or you, or maybe we both kind of came to that conclusion early on when the Blackhawks were doing so well and we wanted to point to somebody who was kind of leading the way. And Patrick Kane, to me, has taken it to another level. We've talked about it on the show in previous weeks. You see a difference in him. He can score. He can set up guys. He's amazing in the shootout, maybe the best shootout goal scorer we have in the NHL right now. And, when you look at people who vote, they do give a lot of credit to a team that's having a lot of success. It's kind of like the defenseman when I was talking about, who's the best defenseman on the best defensive team. Well, who's the best or most impactful offensive player on the best team in the NHL? and I think you could certainly make the argument that that Patrick Kane is that guy. So halfway through the season, Patrick Kane's my MVP.
All right, nothing wrong with Patrick Kane, and it was, I believe, that first game we saw at Staples Center between the Kings and the Blackhawks when Patrick Kane had a couple of points, just looked fantastic, and then I was reading articles and hearing interviews with him about how he had rededicated himself to the sport and how he was ready to take his game to the level that he expected and to really fulfill his potential for a full season and dedicate himself to working hard and being the right guy on and off the ice. The proof is on the ice this year. He's fantastic. He's been by far the best player for the Blackhawks, and that's a fine selection as the MVP. Chris Kunitz is, to me, a recipient of Sidney Crosby's greatness. He just happens to be the winger that's on that line. I've watched enough Penguins games, because you have to if you have NBC Sports Network, that I don't see Chris Kunitz creating a lot of his own offense. I see him being the guy that knows to keep his stick on the ice and be in the right place, drive to the net, look for rebounds, look for deflections from Crosby. If you're looking at a guy that is extremely valuable to a team that is doing very well, I'd be remiss to not point out the captain of the Ducks, Ryan Getzlaf, who's having a season beyond anything I expected. He already has more goals this season than he did all of last season, which really speaks to how poor of a season he had last year. He's got 10 goals, 31 points. He's a plus 14. He has been an absolute force in all three zones on the ice, and it's just impressing the hell out of me with the way he's playing this year. And I was, up until this last week, I thought, well, he's playing this way because it's a contract year. What do you know? He wants to get paid. He got paid. He's still playing that way. There's been no let up. He seems to be refocused, and I hope that lasts. But my pick for the MVP in the NHL for the first half of the season is Sidney Crosby of the Penguins, because he's just that good. I mean, 45 points in 26 games. And we take it for granted. It's like Joel Quenneville, you're given a good team. To me, we expect Sidney Crosby to be this good, so when he is this good, it's not impressive. It's not anything to take notice of because it's expectations. But it is still incredibly impressive what he's able to do, because every team is focusing on him every single night. The first thing they want to do is stop Sidney Crosby, force anybody else on that team other than him and Malkin to beat him. Malkin's missed a couple games now. Crosby has not suffered any production let down. He's been fantastic, and with everybody keying on him every single night, he still produces 33 assists. If you just counted his assists, he would be fourth in the league in scoring. So you can't go wrong picking Sidney Crosby. That was my pick, and so there you have it. That's our first awards of the halfway point. Oh, thank you. The fans are applauding. Ed, we've got two other things to give out, though, and that are team awards. And we wanted to give out our biggest surprises and our biggest disappointments this season. And I think we've already kind of given it away with our pick for Coach of the Year, the Jack Adams Award. So without further ado, my biggest surprise is the Anaheim Ducks. I picked them to be 15th in the Western Conference. They're first in the Western Conference, or second in the Western Conference right now. So obviously a huge shock for me that they're that good. Ed, who is your biggest surprise this season?
Well, you are completely correct. Keeping with my Jack Adams Award winner, my biggest surprise is the Montreal Canadiens. Right now on top of the Eastern Conference with 38 points, a record of 17-5-4. I did not see that coming.
Nobody did, outside of Montreal maybe. Who do you have for your biggest disappointment then this season?
Well, I think I know who yours is going to be.
Yes.
But I got to go with Philadelphia. I know they've had injury issues, but they've been inconsistent, to say the least, so far this season. They still have a lot of talent on that team despite some of the injury issues. And while, teams can struggle and go through some difficult times, they've been on the outside of the top 8 almost the entire season, maybe the entire season so far in the Eastern Conference. They're starting to get a little bit healthier, so we'll see if they can push forward. But they just have been, again, wildly inconsistent. You never know on a given night which team's going to show up. And I've been extremely disappointed with the Philadelphia Flyers so far this year.
I don't think anybody would say anything otherwise for the Flyers. As you mentioned, they've played more games than anybody else in the entire NHL. They've played 27 games, and they're in dead last in the Atlantic Division, behind the Islanders, behind the Devils, who have been struggling. It's shocking to see them this bad. And yet, if you look at the conference standings, they're, 2 wins away from being in the playoffs. So there's still certainly time for them to turn things around. But, yeah, there's not going to be any surprise here. Before the season, I picked the Buffalo Sabres to win the Stanley Cup. And easy, folks, easy. But no, it's been a terrible, terrible season. Biggest disappointment, Buffalo Sabres. Without a doubt. This team has been, I expected a lot more from everybody on this team. I expected Ryan Miller to have a better year. I expected Tyler Myers to be present on most nights. I expected the team to score other than Thomas Vanek. None of that has happened. It looked like they wanted Lindy Ruff to get fired. He did. And then they haven't responded since Ron Rolston took over with anything other than just pedestrian efforts. So, and yet, like the Philadelphia Flyers, the Eastern Conference is one of those where nobody's really out of it. The New York Rangers are in the last playoff spot with 28 points. Buffalo has 21. They certainly need to pick things up, but if they can play the opposite of what they did in the first half, if they go 14-9-3 in the second half, get back to 500, they could be in playoff contention still, salvage their season. But a huge disappointment for me so far. And there's a lot of, San Jose has been a disappointment. I think Dallas, not as good as they were expecting, and Nashville peddling around 500 as we expected. A lot of teams are disappointing. Washington and Tampa Bay are also huge disappointments, but nobody to me is bigger than Buffalo. Just very disappointed in every aspect of their game thus far. So that is our picks. We thank everybody for joining us. I'd like to open this up a little bit to questions now, if we can. So I'm going to unlock everybody here on the bottom, and I see a lot of bored people.
Yeah, Jeff Ponder. Somebody wake him up.
Yeah, but I appreciate everybody joining us. You should all be unlocked. If anybody has any questions, I don't know a way to do this other than just speak up, and I'll pick somebody. But or raise your hand if you have a question, since I can see you. And then if your picture is not on there, just say who you are and whether or not you have a question. So let's start with that. Anyone?
All right then.
That's easy.
They agree with everything that we've said.
Yep. That's very good. Well, we appreciate everybody. Sean, let's show that Puck Podcast jersey while you got it on there. That's a nice looking jersey right there. Very nice. Is that, you got your name on the back, or is it blank? Oh, yes. 86 as well. Is that the year you were born? Yes, it is. I get a thumbs up. Is he still muted? Is that why? But anyway.
He's just shy.
Just shy. Well, we
I don't have a question, but I have a comment.
By all means, John Patella. Where are you, John? Where are you chiming in from?
I'm in Cranberry, New Jersey. It's in central New Jersey. Grew up
Beautiful
as an Islanders fan, but can root for the Devils too. There hasn't been too much of a rivalry between the Islanders and the Devils, so there's not much of a conflict there. But I just wanted to tune in tonight. In fact, I suggested that you do this on your Facebook page. I don't know if you saw that it was my idea or not, but I just want to compliment you guys for the way you keep the show so good week after week, the way you make the fans a part of it by reading emails and doing things like this, just being so accessible. And I just think this is one of the greatest sports communities in all of sports, let alone hockey. So I just wanted to say thank you for all the entertainment and the good sports journalism.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the kind words, always. And I see the silhouette, the Disneyland-like silhouette there behind you, John. Is that you? Is that your kids? Which one is
yes.
that?
Yes, there is. I've got a good eye. That was a Disney World silhouette. Yes,
There you go.
that was my daughter from a few years ago. So
Yeah, those
they
hung on
remind
my
me we
wall.
haven't been to Disney in a few years. So I think maybe there's a
Oh,
trip coming in the next year or
John, don't feel bad. I live in Southern California. I haven't been to Disneyland since 1988.
well, that's for legal reasons. Ed has not been allowed back. That expires next year, and he plans on going back. There was an incident with Winnie the Pooh that we won't get into. But no, thank you very much.
I've been told by
John.
my attorney not to mention it, not to comment on that.
Yeah, pending. Man, 25 years later, the lawsuit is still pending.
Yes,
Thank
Jeff
you very
Ponder.
much.
Jeff Ponder has his hand
Jeff
up.
Ponder has a question, I see. He's remembering my cue. Yes, go ahead, Jeff Ponder.
Oh, no audio.
No,
Jeff, we cannot hear you.
I think you have to manually unmute yourself at the top.
Manually unmute yourself, Jeff.
How's that? Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yes.
Go right
Good.
ahead.
Doug, behind you there, is that a game-worn jersey, or is that just your favorite jersey the Ducks have owned?
That is it's my favorite jersey the Ducks have ever worn, and you can barely tell, but it's team signed, believe it or not. And somebody was just asking me as I was setting this up. It usually hangs on the wall over here in my office. I'm still at work, and usually hangs proudly on the wall. But somebody was asking me, is that team signed from the championship year? And I said, oh, Lord, no. It is. That would cost far too much. This is team signed from one of the worst Ducks teams, I believe. I know I have. Let me see if I can. I know I have like Mark Schweinard on here.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
How about Frederick Olesen?
I think I do have the Smiling Swede on there, as a matter of
Oh,
fact.
yeah.
Yeah. Let me see if I can't. They
That
signed
wasn't
it
a
with
Terry
gold
Yake
pen.
team, was it?
No. Thankfully, I know Steve Ruchin we got right here. That's Guy Bear,
Oh,
Vitaly
nice.
Vishnevsky. I'm trying to read some of the names here. It was some good players on that team. Well, I mean, to me, they're all good players, right? So,
Right.
But no, it was not a game-worn jersey. Just one that I got as team signed, and then decided to have it framed and make it look nice and pretty. And I've always liked that jersey, though. That's like the Nike year, the 96, 97, isn't that when they were wearing those jerseys? And I always liked that color scheme, that look. And so, and as you can see, I've got the old. I prefer that logo. I don't know. I don't like the new one too much.
I agree with you. I like it better, too.
Yeah, although I
hate them
do
all.
like the D, the webbed D that they kind of have as their alternate now. I like that one. I just don't like Ducks spelled out. That's not a logo to me. That's
No,
a team
I
name.
agree.
So, but yeah. Ed, is that flag? That's from the one that flies outside Casa Garcia, is it not?
It flew outside all of last year during the Stanley Cup season, and it has now been replaced by the newer logo version. But I had thoughts of maybe trying to get everybody on the championship team to sign that and then frame it. But because of the lockout, for some reason, the Kings are not having their annual event. It's called Tip a King, where you go and you pay $20 and you get an autograph and a picture with whoever you want, and it all goes to charity. I don't know if it's because of the lockout, because of the condensed schedule, but they're not doing it this year. So my plans so far have gone by the wayside. We'll see if we can't get that corrected in the near future. But I saw, Doug, we did a little test before everybody joined us, and my headphones actually worked at that time. But anyway, I saw that you had your jersey very handsomely displayed there, and I said, I got to get something displayed here. So I got the flag and put some tape up on the wall, and so I had to show something. So,
well, if anybody has any question that is not visual, I know Adam and Steven cannot raise their hands, and Eric is apparently got a shot of his roof. His computer has fallen down on the ground. I hope Adam is
I hope he's okay.
Yeah.
There's something moving there.
If you can crawl to the computer and signal to help.
There he is.
My goodness. If you need help, Eric, by all means, call the police. Are you being held against your will?
So this is Steve. I realize I don't have video on. My
Yes, go
apologies
ahead,
for that.
Steve.
I actually don't know why I don't have video. I have to troubleshoot that later. But I had a question a little bit about Toronto and what you felt about Toronto. Do you first off, do you think they're going to make the playoffs? And second, would that put would they just got to kind of make a shoe in for Jack Adams if they actually do finally make the playoffs, even though they'll be knocked out in the first round anyway?
Well, they're certainly get a lot of votes north of the border, I would think. Obviously Toronto, the media capital of Canada, and they certainly get their fair share of attention. So there won't be any lack of exposure, any lack of talk about Randy Carlyle getting the Jack Adams Trophy. So I think if they come back and have a big second half, make the playoffs, he'll definitely. I mean, Doug already has him as one of his top three, and I can't argue with that. But I certainly think Randy Carlyle is going to be right there if Toronto can make a move. And again, they're going to get a lot of attention north of the border and some south of the border as well.
Yeah,
Not Mexico, by the way. I'm talking about the United States.
Okay. You don't think Mexico will be the big favorite of theirs?
Telemundo is all over Randy Carlyle.
Yes.
For Coach of the Year.
No, I absolutely think that if Toronto makes the playoffs with what they have, then absolutely you have to consider them as him as a Jack Adams finalist. I thank you for taking the headset off, Jeff. But no, it was they're having an amazing season. Like I said, I'm not sure what's going on in Toronto that they're finding a way to get it done. But you got to give them credit. And Randy Carlyle, I was a fan of his when he was in Anaheim. I didn't think he should have got fired from here. He did. If the players were tired of playing for him, whatever, so be it. I think he's doing a good job. He's doing what he does. He gets blood from a stone, and he's a great defensive coach. He can make any players play good defense. So I'm not surprised by what he's doing, but I am surprised by the results. So if that makes sense. But yes, I think he would definitely be a candidate, and good for him. I see that Jurat has joined us from the great state of Minnesota, and Jurat, one of the men that joined me to watch me try and eat the 3-foot sausage in Minnesota.
That was very impressive.
Doug, please keep your private life out of this argument.
Yes, easy now, easy. But Jurat, thank you very much for joining us.
Yep.
And how are things in the state of hockey right now? And you're the doctor as well. People should know that you're an actual doctor. Dr. Garcia, Dr. Stolhand, we pretend to be. You're an actual doctor. So, I know you're fascinated by my technique for white blood cell count. You wanted to know my secret for how I diagnose injuries by white blood cell count. But what do you think?
I keep bringing it up in all kinds of situations, and people just look at me funny.
Yeah. Can we check the white blood cell count?
They mock what they don't understand.
Have you begun prescribing gumballs?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just forward me that paper, Eddie, and I'm all over it.
I will. I'll write you a prescription.
We've got a question from the muted section. Sean wanted to know. Well, I will unmute you, Sean. Or you're muted. You're fine. Go right ahead if you want to ask your question, Sean.
If you had to make a prediction at this point for the Rocket Richard, what would it be?
The goal-scoring leader, Ed. Who's going to lead the NHL in goals scored?
That is a good question. It would be hard to go against Stamkos because he likes to just set up on the wing there. That's the Stamkos office, I guess, like Gretzky used to be behind the net. But he's got a great scoring touch. He's got a great wrist shot. He's got guys there who will set him up. So, I mean, if I had to pick somebody, it would be hard to go against Stamkos.
I'm going to go with a guy from your team, Ed. I'm going to say Jeff Carter, who I believe has 17 goals right now.
He does, yes.
And seems to be absolutely on fire. And this being,
I think it's 13 games in a row. I think he's got a goal.
Yeah, I mean, he's absolutely ridiculous. And in a short season like this, like if it was 82 games, I don't think I would assume Jeff Carter could keep this up. But I think he can keep it up for another 15, 20 games, being hot, and pitch in another 10, 15 goals. That'll get him into the 30s. I think if you get 30 or more goals, you have a good chance of leading the league this season. And I would say either him. My other pick is John Tavares, who is having a great season with the Islanders, really taken off and establishing himself as the star player that everybody expected him to be. He's actually coming through as a star player this season on a team that doesn't have a lot of depth. Everybody's keying on him. He's coming through with, I think he's got 16 goals. So those would be my two picks. And I know Jeff Ponders says Olli Jokinen. I don't think he's quite going to do it.
He's going to turn it on, man. Look out. He's going to turn it on.
You know, I watched the Winnipeg game. Actually, yesterday was just a great day of hockey for me. I watched 4 different games. Very lazy day at the house. And the Winnipeg game was one of them. And
Can I interrupt you for a second, Doug?
Go right ahead.
I just want you to know, I'm glad you had a lazy day yesterday and sat back on your comfortable couch and watched 4 games while I toiled away trying to upload that damn show for about 6 hours and having to deal with computers not saving and all those types of things. So I'm glad you had a good day.
As we found out, Ed, with you muting your own computer, that could have been operator error. Somebody else might have taken an hour or 2 to get that show uploaded. And I know that you went out to dinner. You treated yourself to dinner while you thought the show was
I know. I don't know what the hell I was thinking. Not spending my entire one day off a week completely banging my head against that laptop. But please continue with your story.
No, my only point was that Olli Jokinen was virtually invisible in that game, and it was a reminder of just how much that guy's fallen. He was so good for the Panthers. He was passable for the Flames, and now just a forgotten man on a team that is very generic and in need of his ability to score some goals. Winnipeg's another team that's having an out season out of nowhere. But any other questions before we wrap this up, or Ed, do you have anything to say?
No, I was just going to say I'm looking on the internet here at the top 10 players in goal scoring, and Yuri Tolusti is somehow up there for what's the name of your team, Carolina Hurricanes, with 13 goals. That's I don't know when I saw that come, but just thought I'd point it out.
Yep.
I think that Stamkos to lose.
Well, it could be. I mean, Stamkos is certainly a sniper, but again, they've got to turn it on, right? The Lightning can't be this bad all season long. They're going to get some wins going. Although I'm seeing that they are going to. They're thinking basically at the end of this year, if they miss the playoffs, I saw Steve Yzerman he's not committing long term to Guy Boucher. So my James Bond villain could be out of work here at the end of the year if that team misses the playoffs. But that's about it. I think we're going to wrap it up. I see Sean has got a dog that has joined him.
A cat.
No, it's a dog.
Oh, it's a dog.
Oh, it is a dog. What kind of dog you got there, Sean?
It's a Chihuahua Basenji mix.
Oh, that's an odd combination, but so were his parents. What is his name?
Toby.
Toby is a good-looking dog. And I know Jeff had a cat there wandering around earlier, correct, Jeff?
Yes, I did.
What's the name of the cat?
His name is Dr. Zoidberg.
Oh, my. Which is a great reference to Futurama.
Yes, it is. It's my favorite show.
One of my favorite shows as well from the past. And you will like this story that I was at the studio store here on the 20th Century Fox lot. They have basically a general store to buy DVDs, merchandise, and stuff like that from Fox Studios and all the different affiliates that we have. And I'm in there browsing, and I hear a voice that I'm like, I know that voice. I know that voice. I don't know who the person is. I can see him. Yeah. It was Dr. Zoidberg. It was the guy that does the voice for Dr. Zoidberg, and it sounded exactly like him.
That's awesome.
It would be like Dr. Zoidberg shopping, and he's like, "Should I get this shirt? Does it come in a large?" And I'm like, "Oh my God!" And I didn't want to be that guy that went over and said, "Can you please record my outgoing message on my voicemail as Dr. Zoidberg?" But I was so tempted because I love that character. He was absolutely my favorite character. And
you always have Zoidberg.
For those that don't know what we're talking about, he was a crustacean that was a doctor on the animated show Futurama, and the voice was hilarious, the character was hilarious, and It's good to have a cat named Zoidberg. Dr. Zoidberg, excuse me.
Yep, he was one of the few characters that I think every line was hilarious of any cartoon.
Well, Bender was also on that list. I loved Bender.
Yes.
Bender and Homer Simpson could pretty much read the phone book, and I would laugh.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
If those two were on a show called Doug Stolhan Sucks, I would still watch it and laugh every single week.
I heard that's in production.
It is. I've been pitching it around here for a while, and just to get the name recognition out there. Well, we thank you all very much for joining us. This is the first of many. Eddie is going to try and do some of these from the King's press box in the future. I will try and do them from the Ducks press box as well when I am there. And we definitely plan on doing it at the draft and potentially at the NHL Awards show when that gets back going in Las Vegas. So the potential here is very cool once we figure things out, once we get the technology down. And we thank you guys, though, for taking the time to join us and for supporting the show, first and foremost.
Hey, thanks, guys.
Yeah, it still amazes both Eddie and me that we have as many fans as we do and listeners, and that you're all good people. We've met so many of you. We like everyone we've met. I have not had a bad experience with a fan yet, and I would say if I did, but I haven't. They've all been good people, and they come from all different walks of life, and it's been great. And I thank you all very much for taking the time and bearing with us today as we struggled through this as Eddie found the mute button on his computer.
It was all for comedic effect. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Until next time, thank you very much.